When the system you believe in starts to fail the people that it is meant to serve, you're faced with a choice. Our guest today didn't just sit back and watch that happen. She took it as a call to action. Welcome to Her Next Chapter. I'm Karen Maurer, financial advisor with Krilogy here in St. Louis. Her Next Chapter is the show where we help educate, financially and emotionally prepare women for transition. We want those women to thrive in transition and to come out on the other end with clarity and confidence. My guest today is Joan VonDras, a retired public school teacher who spent her career teaching the Constitution, helping students understand not just how our system works, but why it matters. She's stepping into a new chapter now, one that's rooted in public service and civic responsibility because she believes deeply that things can be better. Welcome, Joan.
Thank you for having me, Karen.
I'm very excited to hear about this. You and I met at a luncheon, and you mentioned to me that you were teaching school, and you were teaching the Constitution of all things.
Yes.
Take us all the way back there. How'd that start?
Well, I've been teaching for over 30 years. I've been retired about 12, and I always taught an integrated curriculum. And the Constitution and the founding of the country and the whole, the battles that led up to it were part of what I taught. And when I'm probably the last 20 years, a specific focus on that.
Okay.
And the other piece was all of the time that I had been teaching in Parkway and Clayton, I had a focus on democracy. Because the reason we have public schools is for democracy. Thomas Jefferson was asked when we founded this nation, well, how will you have an uneducated electorate pick their own leader? Because this was a novel idea at the time. And he said, we have to have a public education system. So
Makes
public
sense.
education is important.
Right.
I think the last piece that I wrote in my career was Empowerment Through Talk, Creating Democratic Communities. And it was about how classrooms need to instill that democratic process within the curriculum and teach students how to engage in civil discourse and have conversations.
Sure.
And that's how they really learn things best. So that was a very important part of my career.
And is that in all the public schools? Because I know I went to a private school and I did not have that education, sadly. Is it part of the curriculum in all the public schools or just in the districts where you were teaching?
It was really more of my interest from the first day I started teaching. And I walked into Mike Cerruti's office at McKelvey and Parkway with 13 curriculum guides. And I said, I don't want to teach this way. I want to teach in an integrated way that is realistic and focuses on a project-based approach that ties into real issues.
Sure.
And he said, well, I've been waiting 25 years for somebody to say that. Go for it. $250,000 later, and 11 years in Parkway, I wrote grants all over the place.
Oh, wonderful.
And engaged in staff development. So when I moved to Clayton, it was a very similar piece.
You were able to implement that right away?
Oh, yeah, right away. And it's one of the reasons I went. Dom Senti left Parkway and went to Clayton, and I just wanted to kind of continue my growth.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you've been making a change. You're a disruptor from the beginning.
I guess.
In a positive way.
Yes, yes.
And how fortunate for those students to get the education from you that they did. So what drove you to make a change then?
Well, I was 48, and I guess I had been teaching 27 years at that time, and there was a movement to get away from that negotiated, individualized curriculum, and I knew that wasn't the best way, in my opinion, to teach students. So when you teach students all the same, you don't meet their needs.
Right.
And as a consequence, you end up with more behavior problems, test scores go down, all of those things. You don't need to teach to the test. You need to empower students to think critically,
right,
and be able to navigate information that's in front of them.
Well, and teach them how to think critically.
Right, it is.
They don't just know that.
Right. I ended each day teaching philosophy. Seriously,
right.
That is how I ended every day that I taught, asking questions.
Right.
So it just wasn't the right approach to me. And my husband almost died too.
Oh,
he
my
had
goodness.
a duodenal bleed, and at the time he had good health care, but the health care was managing the doctors, like it is right now. And the doctor wanted him in critical care unit, and the insurance said no.
Wow.
Luckily, he was in a regular room and he was okay. But I had lost my mother, I had lost my husband, I had lost my best friend, and I thought, I'm just going to take some time here and retire, and I could. Okay. So I did some consulting and some other things, but it's been about over a decade.
So when you take that step back from retirement, from teaching, and you've gone through all of this tremendous family loss and family change. How did you keep from just getting stuck in the quicksand? How did you move forward and put one step in front of another? Because I think a lot of people that go through those transitions, especially as women, where we're responsible for maintaining those friendships, that spousal relationship, taking care of our parents, if you've got children, taking care of them, and then of course all your students were your children as well, and you had a tremendous responsibility to them. How do you go through such a major transition and not get stuck?
I think a few ways. Number one, and what you do is making sure women are prepared for that transition. I was prepared. I had my teacher pension. I had done this, very financially responsible in my approach. So I could do that. I was able to do it.
Right. It gives you that freedom.
It does. It gives you the freedom.
Yeah.
Just like it's giving you the freedom to do this right now. And the other piece is so simple things. Like I still went to the same coffee shop every morning at 6:30, like the first year. I still had to have that routine every day, that one thing. The other thing I started with the other women that retired and the principal that retired too is I started a reading group where we just started talking about fantastic books and topics because our staff development was so empowering and teachers were engaged in planning that. So we loved our staff development. And since quite a few of us left, I was the first to announce, and then a few others after that, we started our discussion group, and it's 20 years later, but 12 years later, and it's still going strong. There was that, as well as when I retired, I thought, well, what can I do? I took one of my students who I felt was the most at risk, and I decided that I was going to tutor her every week and get her out of the situation that she was in and help out financially when I could. I would take her to the salon. I would take her out, for lunch. I'd meet her even into high school. And even my students, my children got involved teaching her physics and chemistry when she was in high school. And now she's in college. She's successful. She left her situation, actually moved to Texas.
Wow.
And we're in touch. We just spoke yesterday. And then I also did some consulting.
Okay.
That kind of thing. But then
so
I also
sometimes just doing something for somebody else helps pull you out of that or keeps moving you forward.
Keeps you moving you forward. Because I think to just stop when you've invested so much in a career can be a scary thing. But if you just do little steps, what are those things that were so meaningful to you in the career, and how can it transition into your post-career life?
Right. And I love that a couple of those things that kept you rooted, that morning coffee and those friendships, those relationships. And I think as a teacher, you're always a lifelong learner. And so continuing to keep yourself embedded in that environment where you're always learning and educating, keeps you connected with your values and just who you are at the core.
Right.
You can kind of clearly see how that all weaves in together.
I know you love books.
Right.
And the book Humankind, it was a bestseller about a year ago. And that philosopher wrote a new book called Moral Ambition. And it's really a call more for younger people about a career that has a moral ambition to it. And I really felt that my job was a job of consequence. And it had this morality to it where I really wanted to make the world a better place.
Right.
So I think having a career like that helped me in that transition because I was able to transition into that in retirement.
I love that. I'm going to read that book. I haven't. But I look at, even what I do, you feel such a moral responsibility to care for these people, to be a financial steward of their money, but to also help them prepare for aging.
Yes.
And now the significant costs, as we'll talk about, that come with healthcare in aging, and how many people are not prepared for that and are not prepared for how that evolves. It's frightening. And as a financial advisor, when I see clients go through that who are not prepared, or adult children who come in whose parents are ready to move to that next stage of care, and sometimes it's a deer in the headlights. And so the sooner we can start working and preparing people financially and emotionally, because I find if people aren't prepared financially, then they can't deal with the emotional part of the transition. And I think that comes even with retirement, because you've got an identity change. Did you feel that change in identity when you left teaching to, okay, now what do I do?
I felt it, we talked about this as teachers. Fall hits hard, right? Those first few years when you've got, fall, everybody's going back, and it's exciting. And that's, you mourn that piece that you have lost.
Yeah, you got to say goodbye to it.
All right, so many of us would plan other things at the time.
A trip
or getting together and such. But I want to go back to what you just said. I was in the parking lot yesterday, and I was speaking to a woman who's probably in her late 70s, maybe early 80s. And she thought she was pretty well prepared financially, but all of a sudden in her condo, there's this $5,000 special assessment.
Yep.
And she's, she's not ready for that.
Right. That's huge.
It's an unexpected cost.
Huge.
And she's also concerned about her Social Security and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And she was, tearing up.
Right. It's scary.
It's scary.
It's absolutely scary.
Yes.
And if you can't rely on family or you don't want to, a lot of parents don't want to have to ask for help from their adult children.
Or with her adult child, who has a job making $17 an hour working in a hospital, she's facing, additional costs with what is going on with her life.
Right.
So a lot of, people that are my age are also helping out children because they don't have the same economy. Even though they're working as hard as many of us did, some of those ladders up are not there that we had.
Right. The salary is not commensurate with the expenses.
Right.
Even though, to your point, they've been educated and they're working as hard as they possibly can.
Yeah.
They can't just step out and buy a home and, how do they get ahead?
Right.
And there's so much wealth that is passing from generation to generation, but people are also living much longer. So I don't see that wealth passing as quickly.
Right.
So by the time they're inheriting that wealth, because people are living into their 90s, well, by this point, the people, the next generation is in their late 60s and 70s. They needed the money a long time ago.
Right.
So it is an interesting trend that I think we're seeing there, how they all are aligning. Mm-hmm. So take us into the next stage, because this gets really interesting now.
Right. So I remember in January 2025, I went to a No Kings protest. And it was really cold that day. So I was coming back with my hot chocolate. And across the way, there were a group of protesters yelling at this Tesla that was making a right turn onto Chesterfield Airport. Swastikar, swastikar. I'm like, what are we doing? That is not why I was there that day. Mm-hmm. And I was really upset about that because I drive an electric car. She drives an electric car. Mm-hmm. We both look like we were about the same age, and we probably had things in common. But we tend to judge. We're in this toxic era of labels of people by what they wear or what they drive, and we lash out. And what that is contempt. Mm-hmm. There's another book that I love. It's Love Your Enemies by Arthur Brooks, How Decent People Can Save America from a Culture of Contempt. And that is what I saw there. And when you're a teacher, you think the whole world's your classroom. And I wanted to shout, stop it, but I was across the way. I couldn't get there fast enough. Right. But again, I went home and I made a video about it. And I took some excerpts from Arthur Brooks' book, about Lincoln. We are not enemies, but friends, and we must not break our bonds of affection.
Right.
And because of that, I thought, well, what can I do? What is my superpower? My superpower is getting people to come together who have differing points of view, as you do in staff development, and find a path forward. So I just started doing these workshops. I just got space in local libraries all over District 2 and started having workshops on bridging the divide, how to save democracy one conversation at a time. Because we should be able to talk about politics.
Sure.
It impacts us from the minute we get up in the morning till the time we go to sleep at night.
Right.
Everything financial is all based in politics.
Sure.
We've got to be able to have these conversations. And in that year and a half of doing these workshops, what I know is that people are not as divided or far apart as social media wants us to think. And you've got about 70% of the population that is tired of this outrage and this instability and this chaos. Mm-hmm. And they want a politics that works.
Right.
So I did have some people ask me to run, but I thought, I'm a retired educator. There's other people that have been in politics. But then I realized one evening in November when I was at one of the town halls that we need this type of approach to politics because there is a way that politics can be. And politics, as usual, isn't meeting the needs. Mm-hmm. And I would go to these town halls, and people would go to the town halls and not get to know one another and talk to one another. And oftentimes it would end up in a yelling match or something, like the one with Wesley Bell, and there have been others all over the country. Anna's never had any, Wagner, so that wasn't happening here. But what a missed opportunity where everybody shows up and then we go home and nobody's talking about a specific policy. We aren't taking time to know our neighbor and just take maybe just 2 minutes to introduce yourself.
Right.
So I thought, I'm going to go ahead and run because politics can be different and it can be better.
Mm-hmm. Well, and just something as human kindness. And as you said, just getting to know your neighbor, you're a lot less likely to get in a big heated argument if you have a foundation of just human kindness.
Right.
And I think, obviously, the show isn't going to take a political position one way or the other, but certainly being able to have a healthy conversation is what everybody wants.
Yes.
And to be able to have an educated conversation. I think that's where there's a lot of challenge, too, is that people get into arguments, and really it's lack of education on the particular topic. And so going to town halls, reading, finding out the facts can certainly help give us a better foundation for a constructive dialogue and reduce some of this conflict that maybe wouldn't exist if we all just took a few extra minutes to learn what we were even arguing about.
And that is the power, I think, of the town halls, the way that I do it. So I had 3 town halls around District 2 because I'm running for District 2 and Wagner's seat, and South County, Franklin County, West County. Okay. And I used a workshop approach where people sat at tables of 6 people. I gave them Maslow's hierarchy, where you look at those bottom 2 layers and ask them, share what policies you think are impacting you, your family, your community, your loved ones. And what, if we have a town hall, would you want that focus to be? And then I had them write that down on a card, and then they went around and shared stories relative to why they chose that. Then at each table, they had to come to consensus about, if we had a town hall, what would you want that topic to be? And they had, they put the cards in order by popularity.
Sure.
And then after that process, every table shared out, and I wrote them on the board. And the stories for how each group came to consensus, those were very interesting. And you could just feel this empowerment that the people had. At first, when they came, it was like, oh my gosh, we're going to have to talk and present.
Right.
But my friends who observed it, who were teachers, said, wow, Joan, by the end of it, they just felt ownership and community, and they felt heard. And that's what people aren't feeling right now. So the next town halls, a series of 3, are, and you brought this up earlier, healthcare. Mm-hmm. That's what bubbled to the top. And we have one in Franklin County, one in West County, one in South County, 3 different times of the Sunday and evening and a work day, and also 3 different locations for people to come, because knowledge is power.
Right.
So one of the people on the panel is Ed Weisbart, Physicians for a National Healthcare Plan, and he is presenting Medicare for All. So whether you agree with that or not, people can come and listen to the facts, the detail, the information on it. And then that's how we have conversations that aren't arguments. They're conversations on, all right, here's an idea. Do we go with this? What are other ideas that we have? And I think that the role of a representative, it bears a responsibility to bring back legislation from D.C. and say, here is what is in it, so you understand it, and to present it, and let's talk about it. And also to take that feedback to D.C. and finesse what that legislation is.
Well, and bridging that gap is huge, because I do see there's, such a disconnect there that the average person doesn't really know what's going on in D.C. or, to your point, when there's a decision made, what does that really mean, and how long is it going to take to be implemented? And I think there are so many different assumptions that people are making, and again, that just adds fuel to the fire when we have these heated discussions. It's that disconnect, it's that uneducation. So I love the town hall approach and empowering the people to decide, what do we want to talk about and why is it relevant? And when you sit across from somebody who says, this is my healthcare experience, it's hard to discount that.
It is.
And I think, to your point, whether you agree with a particular approach or not, if we can all identify the fact that all of these issues matter to all of us in one way or another, and bring that commonality just back down to the ground level.
Yeah. Now, last night I had pizza and politics because I'm trying to engage younger people.
Great
So,
idea.
and these were young people that had very different political views. And this is the second time they've had it. The first time they had it, when we finished, I said, oh, we need to do this again over spring break when we're back from college. And they left off. They said, we didn't get to talk about guns and immigration. So they started with that last night and had an excellent conversation. And I also recorded, I asked them, why did you want to come back? What was of value to you? And the answers were just wonderful. And it was basically that, we learned something new or got to know someone else's perspective on something. Mm-hmm. And Arthur Brooks, the Love Your Enemies author I was talking about, he says stories are the only way we develop empathy because it triggers oxytocin. And once you tell a story, you trigger the oxytocin, and that's how empathy comes in and understanding. And oftentimes, people don't know someone in a position that a policy impacts. So it's easy to make assumptions that that's the policy you need when they really don't know the needs of the person. And that's the value of the stories in the community. Right. And I learn a lot. I mean, there are things that I have heard, especially as I speak to farmers in the area and other environmentalists, or, for example, with, the infrastructure going in for renewables and also the data centers and the implications also with unions as we develop those.
Right.
So when you get out of your silo and have conversations with people outside of that, it just makes you more informed and empowered to make a good decision as a legislator.
Right. Well, and it makes a difference for the people, those of us that aren't farmers. We need to be educated on how a data center moving in next to, somebody's fields, how that's going to impact things. We don't know that if we don't live in that community, and that's not our livelihood, and vice versa. So I love having these town halls. The other thing, too, is bringing in that younger generation. I mean, everybody's vote is equal, counts equally, and a lot of them are so influenced by the prior generation. And again, if that prior generation isn't educated or isn't up to date with current issues, then that younger generation might be missing out as well. So it's such a great opportunity for them to learn from someplace other than social media.
Yes, and so, a lot of the young people, they've just grown up in this digital world of social media. And to sit down and have a conversation, like, wow, we can talk about this, because to your point, they're so used to that social media. And I think that the word of the year Oxford Dictionary was rage bait, which is what Arthur Brooks talks about, the monetized industrial outrage complex. And young people have grown up with that. Yeah. And they've grown up with a largely dysfunctional government. So to get back to that and to see how it can be, how politics can be, is a real empowering thing.
Do you find that they even think that's something that's tangible? Because if they've grown up in where it's always been dysfunctional, it's like growing up in a dysfunctional household. You don't know what a calm, pleasant, household looks like.
What I find is that it gives them hope. They come away inspired that, we can engage and we can fix this. And one of the analogies I use when people complain about their political party, for example, and they're just not going to vote and they're going to tune out. I talk about my third fixer-upper, which was this historic house that really, it needed new infrastructure, it needed new electric, it needed new systems. But it had a really strong foundation, and it was a good, strong house with thick walls and deep good bones. And this is similar to our political parties. And I'm not saying we should have. Maybe we need more political parties, but to just say I'm not going to participate and I'm not going to vote, you're going to let the house rot and fall down. And we have an obligation to those founding fathers and mothers and those 30,000 people that died at the founding of this country, and all those people that fought in wars like my father, and many of us, to keep this democracy alive. And there was no promise that, what did Franklin say? It's a republic if you can keep it, right? It's up to all of us. And when they start to think of it that way, that they have agency over this, then they get excited. Yeah.
Well, and I think everybody needs to know that they can make a difference, that they have a voice, that they have an opportunity to continue to be educated. This is a moving target. This is constantly evolving. There's constantly new topics. You mentioned that you were even doing a town hall on AI. And that certainly is something that's relevant to everybody right now.
Oh, yes.
Those that have no idea what it is and those whose lives now revolve around it.
And who will lose their jobs will transition out with AI.
Or
so
look different.
Look different. So that's a huge, and that's going to be a policy discussion that we have. It's going to be about what kind of regulation we have with AI. Mm-hmm. So everything, is about that. And I do want to go back to what you said about, the work that you do in regard to finance. One of the young women, she was 24, she was at the Policy Batters, one of the very first ones, and she said, people in my generation are losing hope. We don't see a path forward financially, and we're not sure if we can even afford kids with the price of, right? And it's heartbreaking to hear that.
Right.
And the only way we're going to fix that is through policy.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah. I mean, because it's not for lack of effort.
No.
We're certainly working just as hard, but the opportunities are going to have to start to look different. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm always very optimistic on the market, on the economy, on our world, just in the sense that I believe in people. And I believe that people find a way. And whether it's, we've got to reposition what the government looks like, we have to reposition mm-hmm. policy, whatever your solution is, I always feel that people will take it on. And at some point, when you look at COVID and companies pivoted, people had to pivot,
yes.
but we still found a way to stay connected. We still found a way
mm-hmm. to
be entrepreneurial. We still found a way to thrive. A lot of people did. Unfortunately, a lot of people didn't as well. But,
right.
There can be opportunity, but you have to take those action steps and take those steps forward. And I think, I see that so strongly in what you did. I'm not going to sit back and watch something happen that I don't like the way it's unfolding. And you take a step and then you educate people to do the same in whatever path they choose. But if they just take action, educate, have the conversation, then there can be some progress moving forward.
Yes.
I love it. Well, Joan, this has been a wonderful conversation. I appreciate all the information. If people want to learn more about you specifically and your platform, how do they do that?
They would go to votejoan.com, and I would hope to see some people at some of the town halls and the policy events, because this campaign is grassroots, it's innovative, and it is a return to civil discourse and a politics that can be.
Wonderful. And again, while neither I nor Krilogy can take a political position, we certainly support education and healthy conversation. So we appreciate Joan and the mission that you are on, and thank you so much. This is Her Next Chapter, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate the time.